Hello and welcome to Entrepreneur at Money. Of course, this is that show that allows us to actually get interactive in terms of entrepreneurship. Now, on the other side, I must make mention that it's a very special edition, and I must say I'm not alone. I'm actually joined on the other side, even on our Facebook page, by Mr. Grandy Ntumbo. He happens to be a managing consultant and grand business consultant. Think that's what he happens to be. Now, we are getting to summarize on the topic that we started, I think, about 3 episodes, and this is the very final one, where we get to look at how to overcome factors in the economy affecting business. Mr. Ntumbo, you're welcome. How are you?
Thank you so much. Good morning.
Okay, so we seem to have a challenge there with the audio. Could you say that again?
Good morning. Good morning to our listeners. Good morning, Stephanie.
Good morning. Able to get you clearly, but of course, just for the mainstream, obviously, let's see if we could actually get the audio. Okay, it's very audible. So I get the sign that we are audible. So to those that are listening to us on the mainstream, and of course, those that on our social media platform, you can get to comment when if you're listening to us on social media. That is LinkedIn as well as Facebook. 93.7 Money FM Zambia 93.7. Give us a comment in the comment section, or better still, text us or call us directly on 077-1616-290. Now, this has been a very interesting conversation, Mr. Ntumbo, if I must make mention. Now, every day, it's like there's something new happening in terms of entrepreneurship, in terms of news that affects entrepreneurship. Now, I think earlier this week, ERB had actually anticipated that the fuel prices will actually may go high again. We did see a number of SMEs lament the situation, saying, of course, cost of goods later on in essential commodities will still keep going high, and transport also will keep going high. But one thing that never goes high is the wages that people get. Those remain constant. And so people do believe to some extent it's kind of not fair that prices are going high, but wages are remaining very low. That, of course, is just an update of what's happening. But let's get to hear an analysis of what we're going to do today.
All right, I think for today we are summing up what we had started. We're looking at the factors. For those of you who may not have joined us, who are joining us for the first time, on a point where we're summarizing, we are saying we're looking at factors such as, for example, the political environment, changes in the social environment, changes which have happened so far, such as regulators like the Bank of Zambia increasing their lending rates to commercial banks, which further cascades into the commercial banks also increasing the interest rates at which they are going to lend to SMEs and the general public. The second one has been the rise in the fuel prices, I think to an all-time high. And then the other thing has to do with the increase in transport costs and other factors that are happening. Of course, we can see some SMEs have been displaced. They've normally been trading on the streets and so forth. But of course, now they have to realign the strategies and say, well, where else do we have to go from here? So what we are saying is, as entrepreneurs, we must learn to look at, scan our environment. We also get affected by what goes on when the regulators change the regulations, the rules, the bylaws in various towns where we operate. The next thing is, having looked at whatever is happening in the economy, what is the effect? Of course, it has the effect on the cost of production. For example, when fuel goes up, the interest rates go up, it culminates into the cost of goods and services. So how should entrepreneurs respond? I think that's now where our summary is for today. So at least I've tried to briefly look at what has happened. We look at it as the effect of the regulators, ERB, look at regulators like the Bank of Zambia, and then how it culminates into the cost of production going up. And when the cost of production goes up, it means now entrepreneurs have to look at strategies. The automatic one is to increase their selling prices, meaning now the goods will be more expensive. But of course, that has an effect on, you are not alone in business. You are not the only transporter. I'm sure you've seen there are hundreds, tens or hundreds of minibuses in Lusaka. So should you increase the price, how are you going to survive? So that's the question. What strategy do you have to keep surviving? Then on the other hand, we have to look at strategies as an ecosystem. We are an import dependent economy. Much of the goods and services, such as edible or cooking oil, as we normally call it, is largely imported. I'm sure you know that the Zambian economy depends on refining soybeans, and we are not we don't produce adequate quantities, and therefore we normally import the surplus. And part of the cost of food basket is on the edible oil. If you've looked at the last 4 years, people have been lamenting over the cost of edible oil. So that takes us now to also look at the depreciation of the kwacha. I'm sure you can see the kwacha has been depreciating in relation to the United States dollar and other internationally convertible currencies. So that being said, and also our tendency, our propensity to import makes the economy, I think, some kind of or entrepreneurs get depressed, because you have to rely on imports. That's number one. And then the kwacha has been depreciating. So meaning of course, when you are importing, you incur excise duty, customs duty, and other taxes. So meaning the goods that you are selling as a retailer will be more expensive. So now, what strategies do we have to look at? So in one of our sessions, particularly last week, we said, well, it's not time to put on gloomy faces for entrepreneurs. Of course, there are no hard and fast rules. It's not a quick fix game. Most of, I'm sure as you know, most of the entrepreneurs in Zambia, a large part are informal. They're just getting formal. Others are trading on Cairo Road, others on the markets, others are on boots. And to add on salt to the wound, the regulators have been realigning the environment. They are not allowing them to trade on the streets where they've been used to. So meaning now they have to find strategies of surviving. And you've gotten used to trading on the street for the last 5 years. So it's a question of, number one, challenges are not there to kill us. We gave an example of the Japanese economy a number of decades ago. They had, I'm sure you can see the Japanese language. If you're communicating with the Japanese, you need an interpreter to read whatever they are scribbling and so forth. So because of the language barriers, they had to invent the fax machine. So we are not saying we have to reinvent the fax machine, but we are saying, what we're saying is challenges which are there, and all of them cascading or falling on top of each other. The lending rates with the banks getting high, and you know, traditionally interest rates in Zambia are higher or on average are generally higher than in some jurisdictions across the globe. But of course, even if it's cheaper elsewhere, when you convert the debt into kwacha, you face a problem on repayment because you are trading in the local currency, and then you have to convert into United States dollars and repaying your debt, replenishing your stocks, and so forth. So what are these strategies, I think, in a nutshell? So one of them is to have a cost reduction strategy. So we have to keep thinking, what are we going to do? How am I going to reduce my costs? Am I going to charge, for example, 15 way lower than my friends for as bus fares? That's possible, because it's up to you as an individual to look at whether the regulators will allow you to do that. Are you going to do to invent technologies, ways of operating, methods, or your operations getting cheaper than your rivals? Because the other thing you have to bear in mind is you are not alone in that space. You are not the only one who has a minibus around Lusaka. There are thousands, hundreds, or tens of other transporters who are there. And for example, you must have 10 or 5 loads in a day, and then your costs are high. Your drivers have to be paid handsomely. You have to pay the presumptive taxes, which are on average culminate to a day. ZRA will give you rates which you pay annually, and then you can divide that into 12. You can divide that into 30. You can also divide that into 365 to get the daily rates. So as you are pirating every morning, you are paying those taxes despite the cost of fuel going up. ZRA will release their budget, and those taxes are already high. So our number one strategy is cost reduction. Do you have the technologies? But of course, we are talking about probably medium businesses and so forth. But of course, you can see, I'm sure, with the advent of opportunities on the Securities and Exchange Commission, there are businesses which are now able to start without having all the capital. So one of the strategies is to shift. You can't always be on the street forever, as it was in the beginning, as it is now, and as it shall be in the years to come. You don't change in magnitude. So what we are telling our entrepreneurs and ourselves is, you have to be dynamic. In strategy, there's what is called the wickedness of strategy. Not really evil, nothing to do with evil, but what we are saying is factors are always changing. We cannot be on the street and expect to be on the street forever. So that is a grave error that we've been making. So you have to think of, for example, raising 10,000, raising 5,000, and going into the Securities Exchange and see if you can start a tech business, for example. From the booth, you go to a tech business. The Securities Exchange has now, I think for the last 2 years, you saw the capital, the CAPM model, which they have, which they launched, I think, a few months ago. They did it officially, I think, around February and January. So meaning we have to be opportunity and not necessity-driven entrepreneurs. We increasingly have to think of that. You don't just have to think of, let me sell tomatoes, and then I am going to eat a hand-to-mouth situation. You have to look at the business as something that is dynamic and growing. And you have to say, well, today I've made 100,000. I'm not going to make this 100,000 tomorrow, because the factors are not going to be the same. I think that's our message. The factors are changing, so we need to be opportunity-driven, not hand-to-mouth driven. So that's a message which I'm sure you saw when the entrepreneurs were displaced in Cairo Road. They were saying, how are we going to feed our children? How are we going to pay school fees? Nothing wrong with that. But of course, we have now to start thinking of, how am I going to generate a business that is going to outlive you and me? How are we going to create wealth that is going to create more jobs? But of course, the burden is not just on the entrepreneurs. It's also on the Ministry of SME Development. They also have to think of creating a much more enabling environment. Of course, they've started by creating that ministry, but of course, it doesn't end there. I'm sure you saw in the presidential address last week, the president talking of concessional lending on the economy. But of course, that was a speech. We are yet to see how that can be practical and can be implemented, and that how will culminate to our entrepreneurs on the street. I'm sure for it to be termed as a strategy or a policy that can be embraced and that can foster the national economy. What would you say, Stephanie, for now?
Just as I pitch in my own thoughts, the number to call is 077 1616290. 077-1616290. And of course, it would be good if the admin could actually put it on the social media platform for people to actually see. That, of course, is on Facebook. Now, 077-1616290. And of course, my own opinion, I think I can agree with the fact that you said that for businesses, I think you have to have that idea where it's not just about getting to do one particular business for some time. For instance, like you mentioned, the street vendors, I think it's about thinking, say, what kind of business can I do that is going to exist, like creating intergenerational wealth, which I should think rarely. I'm not going to speak for a lot of people, but because I've not seen it common on grounds, I'm going to say rarely people think about, because we've not seen many businesses. Talk about those that were in the 1990s, the detergent paste that we saw. Talk about the drinks that we saw, the snacks that we saw. We don't see them on the market anymore. So I should tell you that the challenges in terms of creating intergenerational wealth. So I think, yes, what we should be thinking about now is not to rely on the recent developments and the things that happen on the economic basis, because of course they are likely to change every day. So today we do have commodities going high. Tomorrow we could have something in relation to water or in relation to maybe it's electricity. So how do we deal with it then? I think that's my takeaway.
All right. Yes. To add on to what you're saying, Stephanie, the other thing that we could keep re-emphasizing is the increasing reality that there is need for not just financial literacy, because in our ecosystem, I'm sure you've seen everybody's talking about financial literacy, knowing how to save, knowing how to get in touch with banks, how to use the mobile telephony, business, sending money, and so forth. So it's not just that part of the financial literacy. Our entrepreneurs need to know that, for example, you have to know that the factors on the market, the political players, should be unpredictable. You should be able to know that the policies that are there today may not be there tomorrow. Tomorrow there will be a different set of policymakers. Yesterday, of course, the boots were, you were allowed by the same bylaws. Today, the same bylaws don't allow you to operate where you're supposed to. So what does that tell us? You are supposed to look at, for example, the political factors are not going to be constant. So that's what entrepreneurs should bear in mind. Number two, the social factors are also not constant, because your market today could be the young people, but then the young people, the population may not grow, the trends can change in demographics and so forth. And therefore, your market today may not be the same market tomorrow. So you must be able to anticipate the change. You must be able to anticipate the increase or decrease in interest rates, the foreign exchange rates, and so forth. You must also take advantage of opportunities which are there in the economy. For example, we can't always keep singing the same song of cooking oil being expensive, having to import. So reasonably, you don't expect the kwacha's appreciation to be sustainable in the long term when, for example, we are relying on salaula and imported clothes over the long term. Cooking oil, we've had a perennial story through and through the years. So entrepreneurs must be able to not just trade on the street or in the shops, but be able to do research. If they can't, you must be able to tap into consultancy and other people that are going to help you look at the trends, look at the gaps which are in the economy. So those gaps, like the deficiency in the production of soybeans, is what should drive the generation of entrepreneurial ideas. So whatever is going on in the economy is a fertile ground for you and me to generate ideas, because ideas are born by looking at the gaps in the ecosystem. The customer needs more soybeans. Maize, mealie meal is more expensive. So we may not sort out the maize problem, the mealie meal problem, by just growing more, because the rains were good. So if people don't grow more, it means the factors of production are also responding to what is happening on the market. They know that if I grow maize is, for example, labor intensive, needs chemicals, needs weeding, the cost of seed is up, the cost of fertilizer is up. So it will be more reasonable for farmers to think of, for example, growing maize, and then you pass it on into your value chain. For example, you grow, you rear your own chickens in good numbers. Instead of taking it to a miller, you make your own chicken feed, because chicken feed has also gone up. So you can't keep on lamenting. My point is, we should be able to look at the gaps, the challenges and problems that are in the economy as a fertilizer or a fertile ground for us to generate viable entrepreneurial or business ideas. So I think that should be the underlining theme. So when you're removed from the street, it should be, I'm sure, painful, but that pain should culminate into generating more ideas, looking at, well, what can I do better? I've been displaced. I can't be mourning forever. So let's generate more ideas. I think that's our emphasis. The other one was, we don't have to keep thinking the political or regulatory environment will always be the same. That's a mistake for an entrepreneur. Various policymakers, not out of malice or anything, they will change. They are affected by, for example, they will remove you from the street because of health factors or other factors. And also, I'm sure the business owners will not be happy. You are just trading at their doorsteps, and then they are paying more cost than you, who is trading at their doorsteps, and you've been legalized. So things will always change. So you must always monitor the trends, monitor the social factors, monitor the market, monitor your competitors. So that's one of the things we are not looking at. Let's look at who our competitors are, what we can do better. Can we improve on our services? Can we offer a bottle of mineral water to a customer that is on the bus to make it more attractive, to make your minibus more attractive than somebody who is not doing that? So those are some of the things, I think, which these factors are challenging us to do. So we need to go into deeper levels. So for businesses that have thrived in the economy, they are always examining, always interacting with the environment, with the factors, so that they can readjust. You keep on adjusting the strategies. Business, to sum up what we are saying, is it is a moving target. So it's a target that you saw at one point at 10 hours, at 12 hours, it will be somewhere else. So if you take time, you are hesitating to shoot, you have to shoot it at one point, it will move. The next point, you have to aim at a different point.
Definitely.
Hello, Stephanie. Yes.
Yes, we can get you.
Yes. Do we have any comments, any calls from our listeners?
Let's see if we can get to your calls on 077-1616-290, 077-1616-290. Now that's the number that will be picking your calls on, as well as your contributions right about now. As we are getting to summarize, we can pick those questions. Now, as we get to summarize, just before you do your final remarks, I think I do appreciate the very fact that you talked about being creative. I think I love the very example, because this week we had another entrepreneur again who actually did talk about that, and he was saying, what's wrong with you actually ordering an extra pack of sweets if you sell sweets, or if you own a grocery store, just to get to appreciate those that come to buy in your store. See it as a marketing strategy, but people will never forget, and you're formulating relationships. So for me, when you talk about a business that's offering mineral water, I'm still looking at it as still being creative, a creative way of maintaining your customers. I think I was reading a book about entrepreneurship, and I think one of the remarkable thoughts I got from that book was the very fact that he said that it takes zero rating, it takes $0, it takes zero kwacha to actually get to build strong relationships, sustainable relationships in terms of business. And I do believe that even in marketing or any other step, building on relationships, formulating ideas and relationships is one of the ways that you will see business stand the test of time. So yes, creativity does then fit in for me in this particular conversation. But as we get to wrap up, we do have a call coming on. Of course, could we pick this call from Mr. Simon? Mr. Simon, hello.
Yes, madam.
Do give us your comment.
Okay, I did hear him correctly. He's saying we should not depend on the political ideas, because they do change. The policies do change. He gave an example of chasing the street vendors. So, but sometimes the things happen when you are not ready. Okay, so it gives pressure. I know what he's trying to say is that we need to think outside the box. But what can you do when it comes without notice? Yeah, that's what I wanted to know.
Thank you, Mr. Simon. Thank you. So, of course, we are going to be picking another call. Just before you chip in, Mr. Ntumbo, I must make mention on the other side that we could pick in one last call on 077-1616-290. Also, we could pick a text message. So just in case you're sending in a text message, we'll be able to read it out on 077-1616-290. I think I'll give you a chance to get to respond to Mr. Simon's question.
Thank you so much, Mr. Simon. We really appreciate your feedback, and you have a very good concern and question. But one thing that we have to say is we are not saying we should rely. What we are saying is we should take advantage of opportunities in the ecosystem. That's number one. So when the environment is there, for example, you're allowed to trade in the street, make maximum use of it, but also always aim to grow. Because the opportunities which are there today, look at how the weather behaves. There was rain season and you had to wear a raincoat and carry an umbrella. Can you still wear a raincoat today in September and an umbrella? No. things have changed. And then the next thing is, of course, you are talking of the something happening suddenly. Look at coronavirus. It came suddenly. You've seen that. So look at the global financial crisis. Everything happens almost suddenly. So this, what is called the agility. In strategy, there is the agility, the strategic agility. So an entrepreneur must be agile. You must not be hard and brittle, where when you fall down, you break. You must be flexible, because the environment keeps on changing. That's one thing an entrepreneur has to bear in mind. So regulation, let's not call it the political, but let's call it the regulators. The regulators, they play in the space of, the politicians play in the space of the regulatory environment. So regulators will change rules, such as, for example, the hygiene and safety standards. Let's not just look at the streets, but the hygiene and safety standards. So they will say, well, now, I'm sure you saw a few years ago, I think I was on Money FM when we, Money 93.7 FM, when that was introduced. I'm sure you could see some time ago, you could go to ShopRite and you get a plastic bag free of charge. But then the regulators came on the scene and said, well, the kind of plastic that you are selling is not biodegradable. So meaning it is not climate smart. It's helping to pollute the environment. So retailers could not continue using that. So they were told to manufacture about a certain thickness of plastic. So that's why ShopRite and others are charging us for that plastic, because it's a little bit more expensive. They can't provide it for free. So the regulators are to chip in. They need a plastic which, when you leave it in the, if you've seen, you leave it in the drawers, it will begin to decompose on its own. So that is a change in another change in the environment. So you used to sell bread without a plastic bag, but the regulators tell you, you can't sell your tomatoes now without a proper wrapping, without a certain degree of cleanness. So at that point, for example, you've gotten used to selling your goods without proper packaging, and then they tell you, if we find you doing that, we'll kick you, or we send you packing. I think we are broadening our examples, not just to look at the street vendors. I think, having answered that question, I would just want to provoke you. I'm sure you saw a video on Facebook some 2-3 years ago of an entrepreneur that had an interesting idea of making fuel out of recycling plastic containers. So I've just been asking myself a question. Where is that entrepreneur? Probably if they could get in touch with you, Stephanie, and we, it's one way. For example, they were saying they were only looking for about 2 million kwacha. So fuel is expensive, and we have somebody who can produce fuel out of plastics that we buy, milk, cooking oil, mineral water, and they can recycle. Why not foster or help such a person that would help you to help such an entrepreneur, rather than compete with such an entrepreneur or shun them out of business? I'm sure I'll share that video with you after. So we are just for interest purposes to encourage creativity on the platform. Let's try to get in touch with that entrepreneur and so forth, because it's a source of ideas. We have a cheaper source of fuel. Let it be tested, let it be certified by ZAPS, and let it be run. That's how the world has revolved.
Funny enough, we had a similar conversation yesterday, and the expert in that conversation also was asking where the person has actually gone. As I'm thinking, maybe it's just time for this person to come and arise and maybe start the strategy, because you're the second person this week talking about that person who came up with that idea. But the problem really is that maybe we could say it's the policies, or maybe we don't just believe in position ourselves, not just as Zambia, but maybe even African commodities. We're doing good. We've seen commodities from South Africa actually come to Zambia, and we trust them. But when it comes to Zambian products and produce, I think we have a lot of rethinking, restructuring to do in terms of having to trust our very own brand. So maybe in that same perspective, that could be the very reason why most ideas that come on board really get lost into thin air before we even get to see them develop. Because another development was, I think someone a few years back also did come up with the development of making a fridge. Was that a fridge? Some young entrepreneur, but we don't see that initiative anymore. And so maybe that's what the Ministry of Technology should really be working on.
Yes, I think I'm sure we had a similar development when Yango came in. I'm sure you saw the conventional or traditional transporters teaming up and matching to the Minister of Transport. So I like Honorable Tayali, the way he came out, Frank Tayali, where he said, well, he stood his ground and supported their stay. So what could have happened if Honorable didn't support Yango? Yango wouldn't have been there. I'm sure you remember that was just last year or the other year. So what we need is probably the respective Ministry of Technology, probably Ministry of SME, to bring that on board, because they say doing the same thing and expecting different results is a sign of insanity. For how long have we been singing about the kwacha depreciating, importing cooking oil, doing this and that? So it means conventional ideas have proved to have failed. So if we continue to think that the thinking that we had 10 years ago will solve our current problems, I'm sure it's not me saying it. They say it's a sign of insanity. You are going through a merry-go-round. So we need innovation. I'm sure you've seen electric vehicles. So why are we always embracing other people's ideas and we are shunning this man? Where has he hibernated? So I'm sure, let's prop up the conversation on this platform, and let's see this gentleman or that entrepreneurial team coming up, and we probably look at what is it? Is it the capital, the securities, and the Securities and Exchange Commission is there for them to thrive? And I think they were only asking for a little bit more capital. So we need to embrace such ideas.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Ntumbo, for that. I think time does not seem to be our best ally. On the other side, I do have a text message saying good morning from Victor, but also we maybe could get to summarize what are your final remarks, seeing that this is our very last day to talk about this conversation.
All right. I think one of the things that we talk about is we've looked at various factors: the depreciation of the kwacha, the rise in fuel. We also have, for a number of things that have happened, the Bank of Zambia increasing its lending rates, so making it a little bit challenging for entrepreneurs to exist, to run their businesses and so forth. So then the next thing that we are saying is, let's look at these challenges as manure or fertilizer to grow business ideas. The last thing that we'd like to say is we are encouraging entrepreneurs to bring up innovative ideas, like the man that was began to produce fuel out of recycling plastic containers. And lastly, we would urge our entrepreneurs to keep on with trends, scanning the environment. The environment is not static. Let's not look at the negative, and let's also not get complacent. Let's be opportunity and not necessity-driven entrepreneurs.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ntumbo, for today's conversation. Till next week again, it's bye for now.
Thank you so much.